I just remembered something else I was going to ask you before we went on.
Uh-oh. What's that?
I was going to ask you if you were still or again the most hated man in cornhole after being on with Wally. You said
Oh, no.
you said you're going to record something. Was that
it
live?
wasn't. Yeah, it's always live on Monday night to date. Yeah, it's
Was it edgy?
no.
Was it controversial? Are you in trouble?
No. When he originally sent in the 10, subjects he wanted to discuss, I was like, man, some of those, I wasn't aware of exactly how he was framing it. He just sent it in, here's a block of 10 things I want to talk about. And I was like, man, some of those aren't going to go over too well with the people that sign the checks. But yeah.
Interesting. So not like with players, like with
no,
like
with
front office people.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, just decisions, right? Where, but it didn't really come out that way, so it was fine. It was uneventful, put it that way. It was a good show. It was just uneventful.
Okay. Because I was afraid. Well, no one listens to our show anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I was afraid that what we talked about last week was a little edgy with the TV stuff. But
I do
feel
literally no one talks it. No one of importance in that facility watches our show.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good.
Which is funny. So we can literally talk about whatever you want to talk about, whenever you want to talk about it, because apparently they don't watch. So
yeah. Okay. Good. So we got some security in that.
Yeah, we can literally say whatever we want, Jeff. So let's just start bashing people.
It'll be interesting today because our guest that'll be a topic that I'd like to talk to our guest about today. So we can talk to him about it a little bit too. But I do feel passionately about that just because I think it's something simple that can be done, to help just identify the players and get them some.
What was it?
What was it again? Just by being able to identify the players more easily on TV, whether it's through bag colors or through jerseys or the way that we put the names on put the names on the lower third to identify them. Just something to make it a little bit easier. So when someone first tunes in, boom, you know who's playing.
Yeah. I hear you. I think it's any sport that, like, I actually thought about it. Like, if let's say you're just a random sports fan, you turn on the Australian Open. How would you know who's who? The only way that you would know is the little ball next to the person that's serving, unless you know who those people are. So maybe we could do something like that and have a little bag next to the people that are throwing. I don't know, but
yeah, I think that's a great example. I mean, instantly when you turn it on, it takes you a second, but you know who's who.
Yeah.
And I think in ours, especially when the bags get close, and again, they try and do as good a job as possible to make the bags, strikingly different, so you can tell difference on the board. But yeah, but two things. One was player identification. I want the players to be easily identified.
Yeah.
When you're watching and you're looking down at the graphic, and then two, just the actual play-by-play itself. You need to be able to see whose bags are whose. Easily.
Look, I'm with you in this.
That was the big thing. That was my big point last week.
I'm 100% behind you on this. I think this comes down to bag manufacturers and players.
Yeah.
Because we've made people change bags before, and it's an uproar, right? The ACL has had to force people to play with bags that aren't theirs. They have to know this. This isn't new now. This is years, and yet they continue to fight it. It's crazy to me. I mean, it's literally crazy to me. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and they refuse to adjust, and like it's like a pissing contest. It really is. It's like, well, they're not going to make me change. Like, yeah, they are. And now it's getting to the point where people feel so bad about it from the ACL side. They're like, you'll just see them kind of wince and say, well, I guess it's far enough apart. It's like, it's not.
Yeah.
Blue and gray aren't that far apart.
The other thing we can do is just something simple like with the graphic. Like I was saying, if you and I are playing against each other and you're watching TV and I'm on the let's say we're on the near sideline, where Trey and I sit and where you stand, right? So the player who's on kind of that, we'll call it the top side, their name should be on the top line. So if I'm on the top side, the far side of the board, my name would be on top, and then your name on the bottom, so that it lines up correctly with the players the way they are on the court. Yeah. I think even something simple like that helps.
In doubles, it becomes much tougher, but in singles, I think it should be easy to do.
Yeah, I think doubles can be the same. I mean, let's say
it's just how do you do it? But then it looks like opponents are actually partners, and that's where it becomes.
I think if you did like top line Jay and Jordan, and they were on the far side of the boards, Jay, is on the left side. Jay Rubin, Jordan Power,
Mhm.
and let's say
I think they try. I think they try
Graham.
to do that. Yeah, I think they try to do that. It also comes down to managing time and breaks.
Yeah.
Because when they come back, David sometimes doesn't have enough time, and he's like, "All right, stop them on this end." Well, when they put the bags in behind them, I'm actually privy to this, by the way. They end up doing it opposite because there's not enough time coming out of the break, and that's kind of dependent on the truck. And I never want to blame David and those guys for anything, but sometimes what comes, like the way that it's set up originally, because the time's not done right coming out, then it's done backwards, and they have to redo it, and it becomes an issue. But I don't know, man. I think it should be a simple fix, but it always seems to be an issue.
Yeah, it seems simple to me too, but you bring up a great point because it is that's what makes this sport unique, and that's what makes it different than broadcasting a football or a basketball game. And we've talked about this before, but I've got a week to prepare for a game. I know exactly, who I'm going to see.
Yeah.
And we know the team's colors, and I mean it's just very easily identifiable and easy to prepare for the broadcasters and for everyone in the truck. We prepare, like I've got 3 games in 5 days coming up. They will actually send me the graphics that we will go through because we know exactly what teams are playing and when they're playing and what days. With cornhole, it's very chaotic.
It's a couple hours. I mean, it really is. It's a couple
and you
hours.
Don't know who you're going to see, so that's a good point. I mean,
to the players, they don't get it. It's like, it's a couple hours. It's like, it's not as simple as you think it is. Nothing is as simple as everyone thinks it is. Right, because what they have to do in the truck takes time. I mean, just the way they have to set up their relay signals takes time.
Yeah,
it's not as simple as everyone thinks it is. But I agree with you. I think there should be a way that we can identify them better.
I just want to make it because we're still waiting on it to become a next level spectator sport. I just want to make sure, and obviously it's what I do for a living. I just want to make sure that it is as good as it can possibly be on TV. Because right now, that's kind of our lifeline.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the exposure. We all know we're not getting, I mean, other than a few events that we've had, obviously Rock Hill is awesome. But outside of that, we had that one-off in Nashville. But we're still waiting for it to grow as that big spectator sport. So I want it to be just outstanding on TV, because it's great on TV. I mean, it's a lot of people say, even though, and again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole again, but even the bags in, consecutive bags in 25, 30 in a row. Many TV executives that I've talked to, they even love it. There's something mesmerizing about watching the flight of the bag, the way that it softly lands, the way it slides up and disappears into the hole. There's something mesmerizing and something attractive about that on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Not for the players. And again, I don't want to get into this debate.
No.
But I mean, it's really fun to watch on TV. So I just want to make sure that it stays as enjoyable.
Well, I mean, some of
easily identifiable.
Yeah, some of it, Jeff's production value, right? And some of that costs money. And I think where we're at right now from the ACL perspective is we're tapped out on what we can spend.
Yeah.
Some of this would require more money.
Don't take money. Like
you'd be surprised.
The player stuff. The player stuff doesn't take money. It's time. I think it's more of a time thing.
Yeah, talk to David and Sean about some of that and how they have to set up the teams beforehand, because they're actually doing it on the computer beforehand, and you'll see that it actually takes, from what software we have available to use, I think is part of the problem. And that, if you want to use more, you have to pay for more. And so it's
about that.
I think I agree with you. I think there's more that can be done, but it's a production value thing. And I think everyone has to get on the same page. And, I think that we have to get on the same page as far as the ACL and, Sean, and then, whomever else, it's not really Sean as much anymore as it is Josh kind of running the bags and the information there with that platform, with the scoring platform, and then what they have to do in the truck to get that on the air. I think that there's some things that could be done better there, but I don't know enough about it. I don't know what the tweaks are.
I think the biggest pushback that I agree with that you were saying is time, just because it's just so chaotic.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll figure it out. But on a positive note, Michelle did a great job. I loved what we did in Myrtle Beach, just being able to try and tell a few more stories. And it helps out a ton to be able to have Michelle down there, just to be able to kind of further, help do some storytelling. So I thought that was good. I like that.
You talking about the draft or just in general on the floor?
Yeah. Well, I was talking more during the actual broadcast, during the actual college singles and college doubles national championship. We did a good job, I think, of kind of developing some of those stories. So that was good.
And it helps with Michelle doing that. Michelle's a cornhole person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had amazing sideline people before. I mean, truly amazing, that are great professionals. Yep. They just don't have a cornhole background, so everything's brand new to them. So they don't know exactly how to ask the questions, other than very basic, generic questions. You know, like. But Michelle, being a cornhole person, has an ability to ask very sports specific questions, and I think that changes things. And she's able to kind of get into the player a little more than kind of keeping things superficial and at arm's length.
Yeah, no, she did a great job. Loved it. Speaking of cornhole, let me get to one cornhole thing before we get to our guest. With a couple minutes here before he joins us, I was just kind of looking at some things and preparing for Arizona coming up, and it hit me again. You know, Jamie Graham is one. You know how I love the champion. You know, the all-time career wins list. I just love it. I absolutely geek out on that. I love it. Jamie, I forgot. I mean, Jamie Graham. We got to keep our eye on this. He is one win away, one career title away from becoming the all-time winningest player in ACL history. Yeah, we've been talking about Matt Guy being that guy with 18 career titles. You know, he's been our Jack. He's been our Jack Nicklaus, and Jamie is one away from stealing that. I think that's a big deal. Like, I'm looking forward to that.
I think it is, but I think it's an asterisk kind of thing. I mean, when you look at titles, I mean, you didn't always have the shootouts. You didn't always have the number of titles to win that you have now. Yeah. Does that take away from what because I think he'll pass him this year. Does it take away from it? No, not necessarily, but a little bit. I mean, had Matt Guy had the number of shootouts to play in, had Matt Guy had the number of opens to play in, would his number be different? Probably, right? And so you kind of have to look at it from that perspective. I do anyway. But does that change the fact that I think Jamie Graham passes him? Because I think, obviously when they win doubles titles, it stays constant.
Same.
But Jamie's going to win another shootout. Jamie's going to win possibly a singles national. I mean, would it surprise you if Jamie wins an open? No, you know what I mean? So I think he passes him this season. Yeah,
I selfishly, because we've got an open before we go to Arizona, I believe. I think there's an open in
one this weekend.
Yeah. Is that this weekend already? Oh my gosh.
It's either this weekend or next, right?
I know it's the end of the month.
No, it's next weekend. I think it's next weekend.
Yeah, I think it's the end of the month. So I know we've got one more open. But selfishly, if Jamie's going to do it, I want him to do it in Arizona so we can see it.
I think it's tough because who's playing better than Kyle Malone right now? But the fact that there was the break from that weekend, I think favors Jamie because I don't think he beats Kyle that day.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
But
and speaking of Kyle, how great was he last week?
I thought one of our best.
So far, I mean, that was really good. And great question by you there at the end. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew there was some layers behind him, and we all kind of knew about the suspension, but for him to open up about that last week, that was big. That was kind of surprising to me. I wasn't sure he was going to do that. But man, great guest. He was
Kyle's
awesome.
a pretty straightforward guy. I mean, he's got his, everyone's got their things, but Kyle's a pretty open book.
Yeah. All right. You ready for our guest?
Absolutely.
All right. He is no doubt one of our favorites in the sport. And by saying that, Trey Ryder is going to be really, really jealous. But no, the guy that we got on this week is a friend of ours. I mean, I've known him since I first got into the sport. So he's a friend. He is a former ACL pro. We're going to be spending a lot of time together, it sounds like, this year. He's going to be my broadcast partner on the shootouts. Bernie, he's probably widely respected maybe as one of the most analytical guys in the sport. I mean, you call him a professor for a reason. I mean, this guy is a deep dive into the sport of cornhole. No one knows more than he does. And on top of that, he's also, by the way, a full-time mechanical engineer. So he also holds down a full-time job, and he's a terrific dad. And again, and a great friend. So happy to have on BoarderLine once again. Please welcome to the show Anthony Ione.
What's up, guys?
What's
happening?
Guy? Yes.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Man, Jeff always has the best intros, man. It is
it's special, isn't it?
It kind of pumps you up a little bit. You're like, oh, that was pretty good. Can I steal that?
Well, sometimes Anthony, I mean, for me, it's easy. Sometimes I don't think like let's use Kyle Malone last week as an example. Sometimes I don't think that you guys even realize how much you've achieved. Whether it's in your life or in your sport. I mean, it's easy for me because I feel like every week we have really good people on the show. So my part's easy. I think sometimes maybe you guys are shocked by what you've done. I mean, I guess we can kind of start there. I mean, are you shocked by the sports and what it's become and the fact that you and I are going to be calling cornhole on national TV together this year? I mean, do you ever get a chance to absorb that, or are you just too busy?
I think you're right. I think it happens in baby steps, right? You're like, oh, you kind of get good at your local league, and then you win some type of a regional thing, and then maybe you knock down a conference, and then you're taking these baby steps over years, and then maybe when you just don't kind of look back on it and go, started here, now we're here, like, seeing that growth. Someone like Kyle Malone, probably the same thing. It just kind of happens. I call it digging a hole in cornhole. Like, I feel like I started digging a hole in this game 5 years ago. And then now it's just like, I am buried in cornhole. It's like, I don't think there's any way out. I think you embrace it and you love it and you just move forward. But yeah, looking on it, reflecting on it, now that you say it, it's like, oh shit. Yeah, we are going to be broadcasting this year. Let's do this.
But, hey, funny short story, Jeff. You'll love this. So I guess a few years ago when you and I did our first thing together, Anthony, it was on one of the digital broadcasts. It was on the main court, but it was a digital broadcast. Anthony comes up to me and he's like, hey, man, what should I do? He's like asking me for advice. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're a million times better at this than I am. And you're asking me for advice. I've got nothing for you, man. Literally nothing for you.
Were you wearing the stocking cap when he asked you?
I should have been. I think it would have gone better had I done that.
I'm not sure he would have asked you if you're wearing the stocking cap. Let's go ask the dude in the toque.
Yeah, man.
Being on TV.
Got to keep it warm. You guys have full heads of hair. You don't really understand what it's like when it's chilly out.
Speaking of intros, we did have Bernie on our show one time, and I kind of challenged Trey. I was like, we need a Jeff style intro for Bernie.
There's nothing to say. There's literally nothing there to talk about. He's a guy. Here he is.
He's a guy.
He's this person that some of you know.
He's there. He's always there. He's always
kind of around.
There. Yeah. He's there at every single event.
Yeah, he seems to be there a lot.
Sees this guy.
Yeah, you know who we're talking about, kind of.
Freaking Bernie. That's Bernie for you. Like, just right there. That's Bernie for you, man. He won't take any credit. He's a big piece of all of this that we do. I love hanging out with Bernie, man. It's always a good time.
Look at the professor.
Well, while we're talking about TV, you got to be fired up about this. And Anthony, I'm truly, I love working with Trey, and Trey has literally in 3 years, I love him like a brother. But I totally get why he's doing what he's doing. I mean, we got a ton of events that we're going to be traveling to and broadcasting, and someone's got to run the ship, right? I mean, I talked about it last week. Stacy's the king, but gosh darn it, I mean, Trey's got to be there to start running some of this stuff because the sport's getting so huge. So I hate he's got to step back a little bit. But that being said, I am super excited about doing these shootouts with you because I think you bring as analytical as Trey is, I think you bring it to a different level, man. Like, I cannot wait to talk about some of the really, like baseball really went through this era of sabermetrics, right? I feel like we're kind of entering that with cornhole and you with your cornhole science. I wish you had time to even dig into that even more, but I know you're a super busy guy. But all these metrics that we have now in cornhole is super interesting, dude. Like, I cannot wait to dive into some of this stuff with you.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you kind of go just to your opening, you talk about the scope of where broadcasts are going and what Trey is up against. I mean, if you look at last year, you probably add them all up. You had, maybe 9 shootouts. You had maybe 6 or 8 of the Super Holes. You had all the Nationals, all the Worlds. And now this year, we're going to say, let's throw 9 teams events on top of that. So you're going to have all, the 8 events plus the championship. So I don't know what that adds up to, but I'm betting it's mid-20s, maybe close to 30 broadcasts. So for Trey to take that on in addition to what he's doing, just like the rest of the stuff going on in this sport that we all love, every piece of it's growing. The the marketing team is growing, our content team is growing, the folks working all of the sales of all of the gear and the hats, all of that is growing. So here's another example where we need to develop more people to be a piece of this and contribute to the growth. And here's where I'm coming in. Super excited, man. So it looks like I'll be doing so there's going to be 9 shootouts, right? We're going to have 8 of the lead up, the feed in matches to the final plus the final. So so you got 9 there. And then it sounds like we're going to grow the Super Bowl a little bit more. We're going to have 8 plus a final. So 9 of those. So 18 TV broadcasts at 9 different events. Cause I think we're going to double time it, right? We're going to do 2 at each event. So
So not to put you on the spot, but like what do you want to get out on the TV broadcast? Like, what do you want me to feed you to? Do you want to talk more about, because I like to dive into some personal stories, but like what do you want me to do? You really want to dive more into the metrics and the mechanics and all that kind of stuff? What are you looking forward to telling and talking about?
I don't think so. I mean, and I think, Bernie, you mentioned this on a recent episode of BoarderLine. You have and it might have been with Kyle Malone, actually. We have our stream courts, right? Where we're speaking more to diehard people. We get really deep into it. We get, on that mic, I'm more rapid fire. It's like almost bag by bag, building up to some, final hit or some climax. I think on the TV broadcast, and better than me, I think it's different, right? Your audience is different. Your demographic is different. I don't think we get too crazy with the depth we go in. I mean, I would love to get into some X's and O's, maybe just a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
But certainly for me, it's going to be about developing a 2-man, ESPN style broadcast relationship, really pulling back on that rapid fire, really technical, really detailed, and speaking more to a common audience, the living room audience. That's where I'm looking to develop, and how I feed off of you, kind of knowing when is the right time to come in and waiting for you to set me up, but then be prepared to give more of a big picture analysis as opposed to, he threw a reverse cut, tilted throwing hand. He got a 2-inch cut around a level 2 block, like people are going to go,
what the hell?
What the heck?
No. Hold on. And I think this goes back to a point that Jeff's made quite a few times, and he made it again at the beginning, talking about how the average fan, you're talking different sports executives or broadcast executives, like to see the 25 bags in a row. I think someone like Anthony can change that a little bit, because he is so in depth with why a dirtier game is A, more exciting, and B, harder to play. And I think having someone like Anthony on your team Trey could do this as well, but Anthony's so good at coming up with the reasons why so fast. So he can take you in 2 or 3 rounds and explain to you why, hey, what they're doing right now is actually a little bit harder to do and more exciting than just these guys throwing every bag in the hole. And I think that's going to be really good for the sport going forward, because it will finally give the average viewer a reason to why they're seeing bags on the board and bags off the board.
Right. Yeah. In the past, obviously I was a player first, right? So that's how I got deep into this thing as a player and a pro, and now as a part of the commentary team. But it's like, in the past, I always wanted to do the players justice in a commentary. I wanted them to look back on it and make it exciting to watch their own match. So it's always been very player detailed, very, very deep, but I still want that experience for them. I want, we got Kyle Malone and Jamie Graham coming up here soon. We've got, Rogie Streaker and Cheyenne. I want them to be able to look back on their TV broadcast match and go, I want to predict correctly. I want to be able to predict the next shot. So that does require a lot of technical mind, right? Hey, I know what bag she's throwing. I know she's going to throw a stick side. I see the setup. I know Cheyenne is a player. I know Jamie Graham is a player. So I want to get really good at predicting the right shot. I think that's exciting for them too, as well as the audience. There's a lot of things I want to accomplish, but definitely tightening up our relationship, getting really good at shot predictions, and then maybe dropping just a little bit more technical kind of feedback to the viewers.
Yeah, I love that. This past weekend, to use a football analogy, and we do not see him in a TV analyst role very often because he's always in the studio. Tony Dungy was so good this past weekend. I mean, you can tell he's still close to the game, and this is why you being a former pro and still a current player at a high level is so critical, because Tony Dungy, despite his age, is still so close to the game. He could kind of predict, and he could see the game plan. You know, it was like, because he was doing the Chargers and the Jaguars, and he could tell exactly what the defensive plan was for the Chargers. He said they moved everybody up, right, and cut off all of the short passes by Trevor Lawrence. He had no place to go, no outlets, nothing across the middle. They knew that that's what he was going to do, so they shut that down. And the fact that he instantly picked up on that was just terrific. And that's what I think you are going to bring so much to the broadcast, because you are going to see that strategy instantly. And you're right. You're going to be able to predict, hey, here's what he's doing, and here's what he needs to do. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited about that. But I know we're going to run out of time again. We always do this with you. And,
it happens.
And for people who don't know, Anthony is a great personal story. So we are going to get into this. But real quick, Bernie, you bring up a great point. And I'm slowly starting to see that it is so important on our end to talk about the importance of cornhole, how the game is kind of changing, and there is a defensive element to the sport. You know, it's not like darts, it's not like bowling. There's defense to this niche sport that you can play, and I think that's an important side to talk about. And I've actually even noticed some of my friends, you know, who will say, hey, you know, these guys are so good to watch, and I've noticed that sometimes they'll even try and get in the way of somebody else. You know, so people are getting it. I feel like they're kind of getting it. So I think that'll be really important. And I'm glad you said that, Anthony, because that's something that you and I can focus on. All right, guys. Hey,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
The
only thing I was going to say was, like, I think from a player, and Anthony, tell me if I'm wrong, I think it would be harder to throw a really good block than to throw it in the hole.
Oh, there's no doubt. So it is harder to throw a block. Now, when we say block, throwing a block in the right position versus a hole shot, because the way I look at it, and actually I just dropped a video today. It'll be a good watch for you, Jeff. It'll really kind of build some of that competency as well, that knowledge. But I dropped a video today called The Blocker. Now it's going to be a 3-part series. It'll describe the level 1, the level 2, and then 3 through 6 will be its own video. So it's going to be a 3-part series. I've done 2. I don't know if I'm going to do the 3rd. It's a really big, like, investment time-wise, but I think eventually I need to get it done. But it goes through just that, how hard it is to lay a block, because you're controlling both the distance and the left to right. On a hole shot, you don't really need to control you could hammer the hole at max velocity and still end up in the hole. You're really just controlling your left to right. So laying a perfect block is so important. And also, you're kind of putting yourself out there. When you miss that block, you've kind of given up 2 points right out of the gate. So it's a risk to commit to. When you miss back blocks, you typically give up big points, 4 points, 7 points. So it's the most underrated shot, in my opinion. And I talk about that in the video, and the most difficult, I think, to throw, because it usually comes with a bit of pressure too, because you're like, if I miss this, I'm screwed. So it's a tough shot.
That's perfect right there. What you just said, that goes into Bernie's point. That's what we need to talk about. I love that kind of stuff, because I think it's easy. I think it's easy to comprehend. I mean, even I comprehend a level 1 block versus level 2 versus a level 3 and below. I get it. I understand but why? Yes. Why is it what's the difference between a level 2? Why would you throw a level 2 versus level 1? You know, getting into that kind of stuff. I think I don't know. I think people will like that. I think it might be kind of fun to get into. So we'll do that.
Heck yeah. Let's do that.
All right. Real quick. Predictions this year. I kind of you and I were emailing back and forth. I thought it'd be kind of fun to not only hear your favorites, but maybe hear a couple of people that you're worried about. I opened up to you last night, and Bernie, I don't think I tagged you on this. I'm sorry, I should have. I'm a player that I'm worried about this year, and I love him, Matt Guy. For some reason, I'm concerned about Matt Guy, and I'm not going to freak out and say the game has passed him by, or not, not age wise, just style wise. I'm worried about Matt Guy and what I'm seeing out of him versus what I'm seeing out of the field. Is there any name that you're concerned about this year?
Matt Guy.
Do you agree with me at all, or no?
So, absolutely, 100%.
For me, I don't worry about Matt Guy being a top 10 player. There's no way he's not going to be a top 10 player.
Yeah.
What I worry about is getting to the final in winning those championships, specifically in round limited formats.
Yes.
Just because it's a whole different mindset. Now, Matt Guy might be the most aggressive player on the planet, but that aggression comes with talent. So if either of us got up to the board with an 81% airmail, for example, we're going to be more aggressive on the airmail because we're so good at it. But I think there are times when, and he was actually just on a recent podcast himself, where he was talking about, hey, maybe it's time I start thinking about the game a little differently. Maybe it's why I'm not winning these championships. So I think Matt Guy should continue doing what he's doing, but just change his decision-making a little bit. Meaning, hey, I'm going to push this level 1 block versus go over the top of it. You know, that could be the 2 points on round 10 that got him a W. So,
but does he throw it hard enough? I mean, that's all. I mean, believe it or not, like most people don't realize this at home. He simply doesn't throw it that hard.
Agreed.
So can he get a sticky bag that's on the sticky side? Can he push through a lot of those? I don't know if he can.
Totally agree.
And that's the thing. Matt Guy is so good, he does not need to push through anything level 2 or lower. He just needs to slide through a level 1. That's it.
Sure.
He's not a push guy. He doesn't have the technique, the speed, the flatness of a bag to be a push guy, but he can shove through a level 1 all day, yet he chooses to airmail over those. And sometimes I think it's big or low, right? It's going to pay off big, or it's going to kill you in the end. But I'm not worried about Matt Guy being a top 10, top 5 player, but I do worry about some of the round limited formats and some of the decision making.
Well, hold on. I'm not worried about him being a top 10 player. I am worried about him being a top 5 player.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference with Matt Guy, because for his entire career, he's been the guy. I mean, not to be punny, but is it? I'm with
you, Bernie.
Are we getting to a point where he's starting to maybe be 5th or 6th best in the world? Are we there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 5 right now when we dropped our top 10, and only because of decision making. I don't think anyone is going to out airmail Matt Guy. They're not going to out chase him to the hole.
Sure.
But if he can change up some of his decision making, I think he goes from 5 to 1, just with some decision making there. But
will he? I mean, that's the thing. Will he?
Yeah.
I mean, people get pretty stubborn. Yeah.
I'm talking about the history of the game. How long has this game been around? Matt Guy is a good example of it. He was throwing his first bag like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's told his story about, I think it was driving a truck and he saw a sign and it was and he dipped in. If you take that back, it was 25 years ago. So someone who's been that successful for so long coming in and, it's like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like, hey, now we want you to do this. Well, why? This has been working for me for so long. I think it's getting over that mindset and accepting something a little bit different. Not a big change, just a small change. And I think it would benefit him largely.
So any other names that come to mind that you are concerned with, whether it's because of a change of a bag or just because of the style of play right now? Anybody like Jordan Power? I love Jordan, right? I love watching him play. I mean, there's so many players I love, and I feel like I say I love everybody, but I truly do. But I mean, Jordan, the bag change, and that wasn't something that I noticed until Myrtle Beach. Wally said, "Hey, wait till you watch him with the Titan bags. I think he might be still trying to get used to it." And Jordan's saying all the right things, but is he comfortable with those new bags? I mean, does someone like that worry you at all?
Hey, there's a lot to be said about putting a new bag in your hand. Not only going through the break-in process to get it where you want, and no bag breaks in the same way twice. I mean, Tony Smith is a good example. He's probably never going to get that combat to break in the same way that his current Reds do. Alec Ryan going through the same thing with his cannons, with his bag. So the way a bag feels and the way a bag reacts, it's so huge when you get down to this elite level. I mean, hey, if you're out there throwing comp bags and you put a new bag in your hand, probably not a big difference. But these guys are so accurate and so precise. If something is just slightly small, the speed is just that much faster. The bounce out of it is just that much less. It's going to change everything for these guys and how they approach the game. And Tony Smith is a good example. So I think all the players are going through that. All the players have to throw these new 2023, dated pro model bags. Everyone's out there getting ready for nationals, breaking these things in. So I think that does level the playing field a little bit. The speed control guys need to get those things, whatever they do, get them dirty, get them broke in as much, however they get them to the speed where they need to get to is going to be really important going into National 1. Tony Smith, again, I use him because his entire game is based off of the speed of his bag. Alec Ryan, another example. So they need to really get those things right where they need, because they're it's a more complex game that they play to get to the same spot. You know, a Matt guy is going to reach a championship this way. Those guys are going to reach a championship this way. It's a lot harder the way that they're doing it, just because they're throwing these difficult, complex bags to throw. You put those bags in an average person's hand, it's amazing what those things do. You know, they'll have a bag going straight at the hole, and then it cuts off of the board. Like, it's that drastic of a change. You know, it's like swinging bladed clubs versus regular clubs.
There
like,
you go.
You know, there's a good analogy. You know, it's just, you got to have the talent to be able to do that.
So I've got one for you. When you're talking about Jordan Power, and this is something that's been bothering me about Jordan and a couple other players, because remember a while back, Jeff, we had a show and we talked about, you know, kind of, you know, a little bit of the chatter, a little bit of talking smack in the sport, which I don't mind as long as it's organic, right? Like if it makes sense and it's kind of part of what's happening. For example, the World Championship comeback that he and Jay had, it seemed organic. It seemed natural when he was talking smack. He's getting to a point, and I think there's some other players that are like, they're talking so much because they think that's part of who they are, that it's taking themselves out of their game at times. And it's adding pressure to their games. I think Adam Hisner is someone that does this, especially in doubles where he's talking too much. It's like, it's part of your game. We understand it's part of your game, but you can tell when it's genuine and organic, and you can tell when it's kind of forced, contrived. And like, I wonder if there's a line there that some of these players, when they step over it, it makes it harder on themselves. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I've seen it, and I'm sure Anthony, you have too. And just because we're talking about Jordan, I don't mean to pick on Jordan, but I have seen it. I have seen it firsthand become a distraction for him, because all of a sudden all the attention is on him, and that's tough to deal with, right? And then it can also work against you, and your opponent can get all fired up. So I've definitely seen it backfire on some players.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it as long as it's organic. I don't like this contrived piece of it.
Yeah, there can't be like scripted shit talking, you know, like
exactly.
It just has to happen naturally. But
yeah,
to answer your question, Jeff, I think you could talk about who we're not worried about. You know, I think there's only like 5 guys we shouldn't be worried about. You know, someone like an Alex Rawls, a Mark Richards, a Matt guy wouldn't be worried about from a elite level. You know, maybe even a Jamie Graham for sure. I think those are the few that, you know, would show up on everyone's top 10 list. But then there, it really opens up, man. The talent is so insane right now. You know, like a Josh Holland, I might be worried about. Can he maintain a top 10 status right now? Is he falling a little bit with all the talent coming? Tanner Halbert isn't out there playing as much as all of these young players. You know,
great call.
He's got small kids. He's got a job. I mean, I talked to him. He's like, yeah, I mean, I play in my weekly blind draw or my weekly whatever. Somehow that guy it blows my mind that he's able to still compete at a top 10 level with minimal time. Then you got the guys like Harbaugh who are putting in insane amounts of time. All of these rookies, the Hamiltons, the JBJs, you know, the Wiedenfields, these guys wake up, they play cornhole till they go to sleep. I mean, that's what they're doing. And there's something to be said this year about the committed pro players. We had a huge spike this year in the number of players that quit their job, dedicated their time to this game professionally. So, and there was one bracket, I want to say it was the last open or the open before, when you went across the winner of every open bracket, there was only one player who wasn't a committed pro cornhole player, someone who didn't have a full-time job on the side. So these players are starting to show that it does pay off to commit to this game.
Was it Tanner's racket? Because Tanner had Murderer's Row he had to go through in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, there was one of those brackets in Myrtle Beach that was insane. I wanted to talk about it on Around the ACL, but never got to it that level. But
yeah, he told me when he played, I was like, whoa.
Yes, no doubt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a big factor this year is committed players.
All right. Well, speaking of guys who are committed and guys who have other jobs, you have another job. We talked about it. You're a full-time mechanical engineer, so I know our time is short with you. But Anthony, I did want to spend some time and just kind of pull back the curtain with you. We had a great conversation with Kyle Malone. I know you're busy. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it last week.
I did watch it.
But at the end, Bernie asked a great question. You know why all of a sudden is Kyle Malone back? Like, what happened? And all of a sudden, Kyle just really opened up about making better choices in his life. And he was in a really dark spot. And I'm not sure a lot of people know this about you, Anthony, that you're a terrific story. And we didn't get a chance to talk about this when we had you on several months ago. But you know, on the outside, you are tall, and slender, good looking, athletic, successful. but you've been through a lot of shit, man. And I think it's a great story. Like with Kyle's kind of in the middle of it, right? He's trying to come back from it. He still is. You can tell. You've done that, man. You've had, I mean, I wrote it down last time because I wanted to talk to you about it, but family alcoholism, abuse. You talked about a black market adoption. I don't even know what that is. Poverty, cancer. I mean, you've been through a lot, man. How have you, what have you been through and how have you gotten over it?
Yeah, that's that's deep. And that's what's cool. You brought up Kyle Malone. I think this is one of the reasons why I'm so like, that extra cool thing about being a part of this ride is there's so many cool stories out there. I mean, you got Dayton Weber out there competing at the highest level as a quadriplegic. You know, you got Tyler Poitras. He just came out talking about exiting the pro division, fighting through and managing his anxiety struggles. Jay Rubin is a cool story. You know, his upbringing, his loss, you know, close to death, the homelessness. Derek King's another cool story that I think will come out sometime in the future. But yeah, man, I think we all have our own stories, right? Everybody has their own stories on what got them there, and everybody's unique in that way. And somehow it all culminated to us being a part of this game together. I think that is so cool and something. But yeah, for me, you kind of hit the bullets there. But yeah, I was born in Colorado, real young, had young parents, 18 years old, right out of high school. And, you know, my father just started hitting the bottle right out of the gate, you know, so he was struggling pretty early with alcoholism. It got out of control. I was only like 1 or 2 when it peaked. So within a 1 to 2 year period, it just got as bad as it could be. But, you know, beat up my mom really bad, you know, numerous times. There were guns involved. There were drugs involved. Ultimately, she was one of those stories where it's kind of the stuff you see on movies, you know, where she couldn't leave because she feared her life, but knew what she had to do. So she stashed money away as she needed to and came up with a plan to basically disappear. So when I was like 2, we were one day in Denver, Colorado, and the next day we were gone and we fled to Florida. This is where her father had lived at the time. He was a military man, so he kind of bounced around, settled in Florida. But yeah, so we bounced down there. It was real tight. You know, she didn't have an education. She didn't have any really like skills. So she just was drawn to what was available and just started waiting tables at the time. Met a guy when I was like 5, and they had a child together. And that's kind of when life started to get good for us. You know, now you've got 2 incomes. You know, there's a little bit more stability in the house, which ultimately turned bad again. So together they adopted my little sister. That's a whole cool story as well. But in real short, there were 3 little girls living in a car in Florida. And my mom is one of those people who, my mom is tough, man. My mom is as tough as it gets. The shit that she has been through is insane. She has a huge heart. She eventually became a nurse, which I'll just talk real quickly about later. But bottom line, 3 kids, homeless, duct tape diapers stuck to them. The day before Thanksgiving, she sees this and somehow convinced, who doesn't speak any English, this is down in Florida, let me take your daughters home for Thanksgiving. Brought 3 of these girls home with us. She allowed it. We bathed them. We fed them. We cleaned them. Brought them back. It was tough after Thanksgiving, had to bring them back, right? She's like, I can't do this. I can't just bring these kids back. It's a really long story, but started the adoption process. We adopted the youngest. My mom's best friend at the time adopted the middle. And then my grandfather, who also lived in Florida, adopted the oldest. So we rescued all 3 of these little girls from living out of a car. The last one, the oldest one, had an offer to buy on the black market. There's a whole adoption thing on the black market. That was the only adoption that hadn't gone through yet. FBI got involved. My grandfather had to get wired up. Ultimately, this little girl was saved, and she's now in our family. And she's the one that she sits at our, you know, our Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. She lives in Florida right now, but somehow rescued them. That was a crazy story. But
wait a second. Sorry to stop you right there. So just to clarify, just because I don't know anything about this world. So did they find out that the family of the girl then, or the alleged family who wanted to adopt her then, that they didn't want to adopt her for good intentions?
Yes. Yeah. So they ended up actually busting that whole ring or that whole thing. And it was crazy being a part of the wire up for my grandfather. But at the end of the day, they allowed our adoption to go through, and that was 30 something years ago. So that was, it was just a whole insane thing. But the father that the man that my mom married when we were down in there, who had the child with, who had the adoption with, man, I was like 12. I get a phone call from my mom. They had actually separated when I was about 12 or 13. We were visiting, get a call, and it was just, I'll never forget that call, but it was like I was put into action to basically save my brother and sister. So again, a whole nother story. He was arrested on the spot. He did life in prison. So we basically went from this family of 5 to now my mom on her own. Again, no skills. You know, she was waiting tables. My brother was diagnosed with a mental disorder. My sister was diagnosed with leukemia at 4, all at the same time. So she's fighting cancer. Dirt poor. This is where everything went really south for us. So we were basically came back to Colorado. That was our only way to survive. Came back to Colorado. We were living in the poorest areas you could in Colorado. We were on food stamps. The terminal illness actually helped pay our rent. We got $600 a month from, they call it like an SSI or some government thing, but that actually helped pay our rent, having a terminal ill child in the house. It was pretty bad, man. You know, our neighbors were crackheads. You know, I grew up in that probably for about 4 years until I turned 16 when I was able to work. But before that, I had to raise the kids. You know, my mom had to go out and work. So my summers, the worst thing in the world were my summers between like 12, 13 and 15. You know, it was full time, morning to night, raising kids, eating, feeding them, entertaining them, teaching them. It really changed my relationship with my mom. We were no longer a mother, son relationship. It was like we were partners trying to just get through this thing together. And I think there's something to be said when there's no other options and your back is against the wall as a child. You do what you got to do. Like there's no. It's a little different from the way at least that my kids are raised, where they have everything they need, and you try and instill entitlement and lack of entitlement and appreciation. But at the time it was like, you do what you got to do to survive. But yeah, the day I turned 16 really changed our life around. I knew I had to get in there full time, started helping pay bills because it was the only way to get by. We were actually able to upgrade from our ghetto ass 2-bedroom, crackhead apartment to a nicer area, 3-bedroom. For the first time, I kind of had like my own bedroom, my own space, being able to help pay the bills. And that really opened up my eyes to opportunities in life. As soon as I started working, it was like, this is it. I'm about to start making insane amounts of money. So full-time working, going to high school. I was always really good at school. So I was able to knock that out somehow, graduated still with honors, and worked my way up the chain, man. By the time I was 18, in 2 years, I worked in the restaurant business because that's what my mom had done. But in 2 years, I'd worked my way up to, I was literally your tuxedo selling $1,000 bottles of wine to Pat Bolin and the Broncos and the Nuggets and celebrities coming in.
I remember you, I hate to interrupt, but I remember you telling just recently a great story about how much pressure it was having to open up a bottle of wine that's several thousands of dollars.
Yes,
like
right?
You cannot spill even one drop.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
Every drop is money. So,
Exactly.
Hey, dude, we're gonna have to cut you off and do part 2, and because the next step of your life is crazy also. I mean, as crazy as your background is, then all of a sudden, at some point going and getting a higher education and getting a job and having your own family. I mean, it's just a great story. And man, I'm sorry, brother, we got to cut you. I mean, these are the shows.
Bernie only got 10 minutes on our show, so I'm feeling good here.
These are the shows where we could do like Joe Rogan, right? We'd go 3 hours easy, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Hey, Anthony, I can't wait to do the TV events with you. So looking forward to it, and we'll have you on again soon so we can tell kind of part 2 of your comeback story, because it truly is incredible. All right, brother, have a great week. Thanks for coming on, and I guess we'll see you in a few weeks down in Arizona.
Yes, sir. See you guys. Thanks for having me.
See you, buddy.
Bye, guys.
All right, Anthony. Man, sorry, brother. Hate to do it. We're
out. We're out.
Yeah. All right, dude. Have a good week. I'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
Great story. Wow. Thanks, everybody.